It's not by chance that you're viewing this video. There's a reason you're here. Everything is unfolding exactly as it should. Trust the timing of your life and know that you're being led to where you're meant to be. As you stumble on this video, perhaps not by chance, it will serve to awaken your spirit. You may not yet fully comprehend everything that is unfolding within and around you, but something deep inside you is beginning to awaken. You are not like the rest of your family. You perceive the world through a different lens. You experience emotions with greater depth, and you question the norms and beliefs that others accept without hesitation. This is no accident. It is because you have been divinely chosen, not to perpetuate the cycles of the past, but to break them. You have been entrusted with the sacred responsibility of bearing the weight of generational burdens in order to transform the destiny of your bloodline. You are the first in many generations to awaken to this truth. And this awakening is not merely about your personal journey. It is deeply connected to those who came before you and to those who will follow after you. You are the bridge between what was and what will be. You are the shift, the turning point. And this moment right now is your appointed time. Let us begin by breaking this journey down into 7 distinct chapters, so that you may fully grasp the depth and significance of your awakening. A transformation far more powerful and purposeful than you may presently realize. But before we embark on this deeper exploration, I encourage you to like, share, and subscribe. Not as a routine gesture, but because this message transcends mere content. It is a divine confirmation, a sacred call, specifically intended for the chosen ones, those who are awakening to their higher purpose in this pivotal time. So if your spirit resonates with this frequency, I invite you to type 77 in the comments right now. Understand that this number is not arbitrary. It is a sacred code, a divine signal sent to the Most High and the universe, acknowledging that you are the first in your bloodline to awaken, and that you are ready to step boldly into the purpose for which you were created. Not everyone will endure until the end of this journey. Only the truly chosen will. Those who feel the weight of generational change pressing upon them, and yet still make the conscious decision to rise. If you choose to remain with this message, you will gain a deeper clarity of vision, activate your spiritual inheritance, and unlock powerful, hidden truths that your ancestors longed for but could not reach. But you, chosen one, can. Because this is not merely something to be heard once and forgotten. This is a soul activation, a living revelation that continues to unfold, layer by sacred layer with each encounter. Return to it as often as your spirit feels led. For every time you revisit this message, you will receive something new, whether it be a divine confirmation, a hidden key, or a breakthrough uniquely prepared for you. And now, with your heart open and your spirit attuned, right now let's us begin this journey of deeper understanding. Chapter 1. The family patterns you couldn't ignore. From an early age, something deep within you sensed that something wasn't quite right. It wasn't merely about the visible circumstances unfolding around you. It was about the unspoken realities, the emotional silences that lingered in every room. You felt the weight of the tension in the air, the artificial nature of the forced smiles, and the quiet sorrow veiled behind bursts of laughter. You noticed how everyone pretended that everything was perfectly fine, even when the emotional and relational walls of the household were crumbling behind closed doors. And once you became aware of these truths, you could not unsee them. Perhaps you were raised in an environment where open expression of emotions was discouraged or entirely absent, where pain was suppressed rather than addressed, and where generational trauma was handed down like a family heirloom. In such a household, survival often took precedence over healing, and silence became the language through which suffering was preserved. Yet even as a child, you recognized that something needed to change, and that awareness was the first sign of your awakening. Perhaps you witnessed your loved ones silently struggling with addictions they never openly acknowledged, caught in a relentless cycle of toxic behaviors that were accepted as normal. You observed poverty that was never questioned or challenged, abuse that was consistently swept beneath the rug, and secrets that hung heavily in the air, unspoken yet palpable, sitting silently at the dinner table. This was a generational cycle, one that seemed destined to remain unbroken, repeating itself from one era to the next. But for you, it was different. You could not passively accept this reality or shut down your awareness to pretend everything was acceptable. Your spirit was too finely attuned to overlook such deep dysfunction. Even before you had the words to articulate your feelings, Your soul was already sensing the imbalance, the spiritual burden that weighed heavily upon your bloodline, calling you to rise above and break the cycle. While everyone else seemed to play along, accepting these painful realities as mere tradition or simply the way things are, you perceived the true cost beneath the surface. You felt the weight of the curse in motion, not merely as an observer, but as one who deeply absorbed the pain around you. You carried emotional burdens that were not originally yours to bear. You wept for reasons that you could not yet fully comprehend. Spiritually, you felt older and wiser than your chronological age, as if your soul had already lived through this suffering in lifetimes long past. Though you may not have understood it at the time, what you were experiencing was ancestral in nature, an energetic inheritance passed down through generations. You were subconsciously picking up on destructive patterns that had traversed the corridors of time, searching for a person strong enough and courageous enough to break the cycle. That person, without a doubt, was you. And because you perceived what others chose to deny, you were often labeled as the weird one, the too sensitive one, the troublemaker, or the black sheep of the family. However, what they failed to recognize was that your difference was not a flaw, but a divine distinction. You were never meant to simply conform or fit in with the status quo. Rather, you were called to break free from it. Your actions were not acts of rebellion for rebellion's sake, but conscious rejections of the spiritual chains that had long bound your family in silence and suffering. Your soul could no longer remain silent or complacent in the face of spiritual dysfunction. Driven by a deep yearning for truth and healing, you relentlessly questioned everything. Why do we continue to do things this way? Why is there no open dialogue about our pain? Why does healing seem so elusive? And why do so many pretend that everything is fine when it clearly is not? Every question you posed acted as a spark, igniting the flame of your awakening. You were not merely seeking peace, you were yearning for truth. You did not simply desire comfort, you longed for freedom. It was within this profound desire that the awakening quietly began, not with loud proclamations or grand gestures, but as a subtle stirring within your spirit. In those still, reflective moments, you found yourself thinking, this cannot be all there is. There must be something more. Something has to change, and perhaps that change begins with me. You were not just recognizing the generational patterns around you. You were being divinely summoned to interrupt and break them. This is why your spirit could find no rest and why you never truly felt as if you fully belonged. Because you were never meant to simply conform or remain silent. You were the one divinely chosen to awaken what others had long buried, to question the beliefs and patterns that others blindly accepted, and to transform the legacies that were previously passed down without challenge. And that profound realization, that uncomfortable, solitary, yet beautiful awakening, marked the very beginning of your personal transformation. It was the commencement of a new chapter in the history of your bloodline, the pivotal moment when, perhaps without fully knowing it, you embraced your sacred role as the first to awaken. Chapter 2. The heavy burden you never asked for. Being chosen is not always experienced as a blessing, at least not in the beginning. At first it manifests as a weight, an almost unbearable pressure that bears down relentlessly upon your soul. It is a silent burden, one that presses invisibly yet palpably, a load that no one else around you seems to understand or acknowledge. You find yourself carrying the accumulated history of your family's pain, trauma, and unhealed wounds, as if strapped with a backpack heavy with countless stones. Though unseen by others, you feel the weight of each and every one deeply and personally. You are the person to whom everyone turns when everything else falls apart, the one expected to maintain calm in the midst of chaos, the one who listens when no one else will. You are the decision maker, the problem solver, the pillar who holds the family together in times of turmoil. Even when you feel like breaking apart yourself, exhausted by the loneliness and the unfairness of it all, the burden, which was never something you asked for, as you neither raised your hand to volunteer for this assignment, nor signed up for the solitude that accompanies perceiving truths that others choose to ignore, nor willingly accepted the nights spent wrestling with doubt, fear, and confusion, nor desired to be the one who carries the weight of generational wounds and strives to untangle the knots left behind by those who came before you, still rests upon your shoulders, Yet despite all this, here you stand, embodying the paradox you inherent in being the first awakened one in your family bloodline. Although you never asked for the burden that now rests upon your shoulders, your soul was intricately designed to bear its weight, not to be crushed or broken by it, but rather to sustain it with steadfast resilience for just long enough to transform its heaviness into healing, its pain into power, its confusion into clarity, and its seemingly unrelenting pressure into a profound breakthrough. Yet, there are moments when the weight feels utterly unbearable, when you find yourself feeling like walking with a tightrope stretched thin by the relentless forces of expectation, judgment, and responsibility. And in those moments of deep fatigue and doubt, you question how much longer you can endure, how much longer you can hold on, all while battling a pervasive sense of loneliness, so intense it borders on suffocation, as you remain emotionally and spiritually distanced from those unable, or perhaps unwilling, to comprehend the internal war waging quietly within your soul. Though they observe your outward struggles and respond with well-meaning yet hollow platitudes, urging you to simply pray more, to be patient, to let it go, they remain blind to the true depth and intensity of your inner battle, the countless hours spent wrestling with your own thoughts, the sleepless nights filled with a relentless search for meaning, peace, and answers. And yet, the deeper truth remains that this burden you carry is not a punishment, but a sacred responsibility, a divine trust deliberately placed into your hands, not because of your perfection or preparedness, but because God, in infinite wisdom, recognizes a strength within you that even you may fail to see, an inner fortitude that surpasses circumstance, knowing that while your ancestors may have endured their suffering in silence, you were specifically chosen to confront it consciously, to heal it courageously and openly, and ultimately to break the generational cycle with finality and grace. You are the bridge that spans the chasm between past and future, the unwavering light piercing through the darkness of deep-rooted generational wounds. And though your struggle may often feel isolating or endless, it is never in vain. For every tear shed, every moment clouded by doubt, and every sleepless night endured is forging you, through fire and resilience, into the warrior your bloodline has long awaited and desperately needs. And while this burden may shape your path and refine your spirit, it shall never define your essence. For you are not merely carrying pain, you are carrying purpose, carrying the seeds of healing and liberation, and your awakening, though personal and profound, is in fact the sacred beginning of transformation not only for yourself, but for every generation that will come after you, walking a road you've helped clear with your courage. What feels unbearably heavy now, weighing on your spirit and testing the very limits of your endurance, will in time become your greatest strength. For to be the first to awaken is not merely to survive the burden that was never meant to be yours alone, but to transcend it entirely, to rise above its weight, to transform what was once intended to hold you down into the very force that elevates you. And in doing so, you fulfill a deeper purpose, stepping fully into the destiny that was written for you long before you could comprehend its magnitude. Chapter 3. The separation had to happen, the path of the chosen one, and though it is a truth few truly grasp until they have walked through it themselves, this painful, yet deeply purposeful separation becomes inevitable. For if you have ever felt like an outsider within the walls of your own home, like an alien among your own bloodline, know that you are far from alone. Because despite the love you held for your family, undeniable and unwavering, despite your loyalty, your earnest efforts to connect, to explain yourself, to belong and to be understood, there remained an unbridgeable gap, a subtle but profound spiritual distance that language could never quite close. A disconnect that persisted no matter how deeply you tried, all because you did not, and perhaps could not, see the world as they did. While others around you were content merely to survive, accepting the status quo without question, you found yourself craving a deeper truth. While they mindlessly repeated the same cycles of pain and programming, you dared to question the very system that upheld them. While they clung stubbornly to tradition as a source of comfort and identity, you relentlessly searched for transformation and liberation, an experience akin to trying to explain the vividness of color to someone who has only ever known black and white, because you could clearly see the painful patterns and inherited programming that bound them. And it wounded you deeply to witness the people you loved remain trapped within those cycles, even as your soul was breaking free. And that pain was unmistakably real, as were the lonely nights you spent crying, not out of hatred, but because your love for them was so profound that it broke your heart to watch them remain in darkness while you were stepping into the light. You deeply wished for them to rise alongside you, to understand the transformation unfolding within you, and to accompany you on this journey of awakening. Yet you found yourself unable to bring them with you, because that separation was not random, but divine. God deliberately pulling you away, not as a form of punishment, but as a necessary preparation. Not to isolate you eternally, but to elevate you beyond the limitations of the familiar. For as long as you remained entangled in the same destructive patterns, repetitive cycles, and stagnant conversations, growth was impossible, healing unattainable, and clarity obscured, since your spirit required the profound silence of separation in order to truly hear and commune with God. Your soul required solitude to release the past and create space for new beginnings. You needed to learn how to stand alone before embracing your true purpose. And although this process felt like abandonment and appeared as rejection, it was in fact alignment and redirection. As every closed door, every friend who drifted away, and every family member who failed to understand you was all part of a divine strategy. Because not everyone was destined to accompany you on your journey, comprehend the burdens you carried, or walk the path that God had uniquely laid out for you. Chosen one, your elevation necessary needs separation, for you were not called to blend in, but to break through. Yes, the process was painful and lonely, yet the loneliness was not a punishment but a preparation. And within that quiet space, your true identity began to emerge as you started to heal wounds neglected for generations, began to hear God's voice more clearly, and started to remember who you truly are, rather than who others told you to be. And as hard as it was, deep down, you always knew that you were different for a reason, that you couldn't remain where you were, because staying small, staying silent, and staying in alignment with dysfunction would cost you everything your soul had come here to accomplish. Therefore, the separation had to occur as an essential part of your awakening and your rise, reminding you that you are not alone but set apart, not rejected, chosen, not forgotten and prepared. For God had to remove the noise so that you could clearly hear the calling. And now, as you walk in a clarity that only separation could bring, this is the season in which that separation begins to make sense. Chapter 4. The spiritual gifts that began to unfold. As your awakening deepened, a shift started not only around you but within you, initially subtle, as you began to sense things others seemed blind to, feeling the energy in a room before a single word was spoken, noticing the tension behind a smile, the pain behind a joke, and the lie buried within conversations that others dismissed as normal. Although you didn't always have the language to describe these experiences, and at times they even frightened you, causing you to question your sanity and wonder if you were imagining things, deep down you knew that you were tapping into something real, ancient, and spiritual. And that was when you realized this transformation was not merely personal, but rather an unlocking of spiritual gifts that had long lain dormant, awaiting your awakening. As you began to see through people, not with judgment, but with clarity, sensing who was truly for you and who was merely pretending. Experiencing dreams that came true, receiving warnings that proved accurate, and following a gut feeling that guided you away from danger or directly into divine alignment. The more you embraced these gifts, the more they unfolded, like the petals of a sacred flower blossoming in divine timing. The sensitivity that once made you feel out of place, overwhelmed, or overly emotional was now revealing itself as a spiritual superpower, showing that you were not broken but blessed, with your tears having trained your discernment, your silence sharpening your intuition, and your loneliness creating space for divine downloads. And moreover, no one else in your family possessed this level of awareness. You were the first to recognize spiritual warfare, the first to understand generational curses, and the first to break bloodline cycles, not merely through therapy or strategy, but through nice, divine spirit. God was equipping you with tools that your ancestors had prayed for but never accessed, making you the answer to the prayers they never knew how to utter. As the visions, dreams, inner knowing, and the ability to read between the lines and sense what remains unsaid were not random occurrences, but divine signs that you were not merely awake, you were activated. Chosen one, God did not give you these gifts to keep them unused, but to empower you to lead, heal, protect, and guide not only yourself, but others as well. For these gifts enable you to recognize traps before they are set, sense opportunities that others overlook, and speak life into situations that appear dead. You are not crazy, you are called, and your gifts serve as confirmation that you are not merely awakening, but being spiritually equipped for a mission that spans generations, with your gifts functioning as spiritual weapons. You have been entrusted with these gifts because you have demonstrated your capacity to bear the profound weight of awareness, a burden that is undeniably heavy, yet simultaneously sacred. And as you continue to use these gifts, trust them more deeply, and surrender yourself to the guidance of the Spirit flowing through you, what initially manifested as confusion gradually transforms into clarity. What began as isolation evolves into divine insight. And in this process, you are not merely healing yourself, but are actively unlocking the ancestral codes embedded within your entire bloodline, which is precisely why this awakening had to occur, for it signifies the commencement of the true and arduous training ahead. Chapter 5. The backlash from those who do not understand. As you continued to grow and evolve, the resistance around you grew as well. Initially, it manifested in subtle ways, a peculiar glance, a sarcastic remark, or a gradual increase in emotional and physical distance from individuals with whom you were once very close. However, over time, the opposition became more overt and pronounced. Those whom you loved deeply, those whom you had supported unconditionally and for whom you would have made tremendous sacrifices, even gone to war, began to turn against you. Family members started to question the decisions you were making. They struggled to comprehend the reasons behind the changes in your behavior, why you no longer showed up in the ways they had come to expect, why you had established clear boundaries, why you had chosen to stop attending certain events or gatherings, and why you had begun to speak honestly and directly, rather than continue to participate in the same old patterns of dysfunction that had gone unquestioned for so long. To those around you, your transformation appeared to be an act of rebellion, defiance against what they believed to be normal or expected. But from your perspective, it was never about rebellion. It was about survival. It was about reclaiming your freedom, your authenticity, and your peace of mind. As your journey unfolded, friends who once admired your wisdom and sought your counsel began to ridicule the very path you were walking. The same individuals who used to reach out to you for guidance now dismiss you with labels, calling you strange, excessively introspective, or overly spiritual. They make jokes about your sense of peace, suggesting it is insincere or artificial. They laugh at your healing process, treating it as though it were some kind of performance meant to impress rather than a sincere and necessary transformation. Yet, at a deeper level, their mockery is not truly directed at you as a person. What they are reacting to is the reflection you have become, a mirror that reveals to them the aspects of themselves they have long suppressed or ignored. Your growth and evolution have unintentionally highlighted the stagnation in their own lives. Your boundaries, which are an expression of self-respect and inner clarity, confuse them because they themselves have never found the strength to establish such limits. In truth, it is not your change they resent, but the discomfort it awakens within their unexamined selves. They perceive your confidence as arrogance, not because it truly is, but because they themselves have only ever been familiar with insecurity and self-doubt. They misinterpret your journey of healing as an act of selfishness, largely because they were conditioned to believe that enduring pain and suppressing personal needs was a noble expression of loyalty and devotion to others. What they view as emotional distance is not a sign of disrespect or indifference. Rather, it is a necessary form of protection, a conscious decision to preserve your well-being, your growth, and most importantly, the integrity of your purpose. This space you have created is not only for your own preservation, but also to safeguard the path you are called to walk, a path that demands clarity, strength, and freedom from the dysfunction that once held you back. Chosen one, this is the inevitable consequence of breaking free from the mold that has been imposed upon you. When you courageously step outside the confines of the generational script, those deeply ingrained patterns and expectations handed down through your lineage, and begin to write an entirely new narrative for yourself, your very presence becomes a challenge to everything that others have long accepted as normal or unchangeable. The light you carry within you, your unique brilliance and authenticity, is so powerful and radiant that it blinds those who remain trapped in the darkness of old beliefs and outdated ways of being. Rather than pausing to inquire about the process by which you achieve such transformation, these individuals hastily conclude that you have simply changed in a negative way. Instead of drawing inspiration from your growth and newfound strength, they feel intimidated and unsettled. Consequently, rather than offering you support and encouragement, they respond with resistance and opposition. But listen to this truth with absolute clarity. The backlash you face from others is not a burden that belongs to you, nor is it your responsibility to manage their emotional triggers or discomfort. You are under no obligation to diminish yourself, to shrink your light or your presence, simply to preserve their sense of comfort and familiarity. You were never meant to carry the weight of guilt or shame for the act of growing, evolving, and awakening. This profound journey you are on, your awakening, is not intended to appease or please others, but rather to fulfill a purpose that transcends and surpasses the limitations of their opinions and judgments. Undeniably, it wounds deeply when those who are closest to you fail to celebrate your progress and transformation. It is painfully disheartening when the love you offer is met not with acceptance, but with criticism and judgment. Yet despite this pain, you must not allow it to break your spirit or derail your path. Instead, let it serve as a powerful reminder, a reminder that you are undertaking something unprecedented, something your entire bloodline has never witnessed before. You are healing in profound and courageous ways, ways that no one else within your circle has ever possessed the strength or the willingness to undertake. While others have chosen silence, avoidance, or denial, you are boldly walking in your truth, refusing to be complicit in patterns of secrecy and suppression. In a family or community long bound and restricted by the chains of mere survival, you are establishing new standards, new ways of being that challenge and transform the inherited dysfunction. Such a revolutionary process inevitably invites resistance and opposition. Though you may at times feel isolated or alone, you are never truly abandoned, for the Most High walks beside you at every step, and the divine presence continually guides and sustains you through the challenges. The backlash you encounter is not a sign of failure, but rather an unmistakable indicator that you are on the correct path, the path of transformation and liberation. You are shaking the foundations of long-standing strongholds, disrupting cycles of dysfunction that have been tolerated for generations, and courageously calling out behaviors and beliefs that have been accepted as normal for far too long. It is true that those who remain in denial or fear will resist and push back against your progress. Yet this very resistance serves as undeniable proof that your light is powerful, that your presence commands influence, and that your growth and evolution cannot be ignored or diminished. Chapter 6. The responsibility to break the chain. Chosen one, the work you are undertaking is far greater than merely healing from personal pain or addressing the wounds of your own childhood. This process transcends individual recovery and self-improvement. What you are carrying and what you are actively doing is of a generational nature. You are engaged in the profound and difficult task of healing trauma that has been embedded within your bloodline for generations. You are breaking chains, chains that have encircled and constrained your family tree for centuries. Chains forged by addiction, abuse, poverty, fear, silence, emotional suppression, rejection, dysfunction, shame, and spiritual blindness. This is not simply your burden to bear. It is a responsibility that calls for strength, courage, and the determination to dismantle the inherited cycles of suffering so that future generations may walk free. And here is the wild part. None of it began with you, yet all of it is culminating through you. Free Reasons is excellent, which is why the journey feels so intense, why your battles strike deeper than most, and why you experience emotions that do not even originate within you. For your spirit has become the battleground for your entire lineage, meaning you are standing in the fire not only for yourself, but also for those who came before you and those who will come after, so that some of the tears you have shed were for pain passed down through generations who lacked the strength, the awareness, or the freedom to express their own suffering. And some of the thoughts you have wrestled with were not truly your own, but rather inherited patterns, recycled mindsets, and spiritual residue. And now, having become the one whom God has chosen to interrupt the cycle, and having been called to be the pattern breaker, you face a heavy pressure because this is legacy work. You are not merely attempting to feel better, but rather you are shifting the spiritual DNA of your bloodline, creating a new blueprint, a new standard, and a new frequency. For if you did not undertake this task, no one else would. And that is the weight of this call, the cost of this awakening, which undeniably comes with great responsibility. You will have to make decisions that others fail to understand, walk away from traditions that, although familiar, are rooted in dysfunction, and say no to practices your ancestors accepted because they lack the knowledge you now possess. Furthermore, you must engage in the inner work that goes unnoticed and unappreciated, knowing that heaven has recorded every moment, while being the one who speaks truth even when your voice trembles, sets boundaries despite being misunderstood, chooses healing over numbness, and declares that the cycle ends with you even at the cost of your own comfort. This is precisely why the enemy has fought against you so fiercely and why hell has attempted to take you out prematurely. Because if you rise, the curse will fall. If you awaken, the generational slumber will end. And if you heal, your entire bloodline will ultimately triumph. But chosen one, know this. You were built for this purpose, not chosen randomly by God, but intentionally selected because your spirit was strong enough, your heart deep enough, your soul mature enough, and your life and calling anointed enough to bear this great responsibility. So do not underestimate the significance of your actions. For you are not merely surviving, but rewriting history. Not simply changing your own life, but altering the future of an entire bloodline. And not just praying, but planting seeds for generations to come. Your great-grandchildren will one day harvest the fruits of your labor. For this is spiritual warfare and divine alignment. This is what it truly means to walk in purpose. And although it is hard and lonely, it is also holy. Because every step you take in truth and light serves to undo generations of pain, creating an impact that few will ever fully understand. Chapter 7, The Blessings That Follow the Breakthrough, Chosen One. After the storm comes the stillness. After the wilderness comes the promised land. After the breaking comes the blessing. And after the crushing seasons you have endured emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, there is now a divine release unfolding in your life, which is not merely something you hope for, but rather something heaven has ordained. You've cried in silence and battled unseen demons, having fasted when your soul was dry and questioned everything, even your calling, yet continuing to persevere by walking through fire, breaking soul ties, standing alone when everyone else folded, and remaining faithful when it would have been easier to numb yourself and conform. Now the reward is being unlocked in this season where your obedience will be honored. For every yes you gave God in private, every painful step taken in faith, and every generational pattern confronted has been duly noted by heaven. The blessings being released now are not merely random favor, but rather the fruit of spiritual labor, divine compensation, and an inheritance that was always yours, which have been unlocked through your endurance, as your pain is being transformed into power with the very things that sought to destroy you, now being used to elevate you. Where rejection made you wise, betrayal made you discerning, loss made you grateful, and silence enabled you to hear God more clearly. So that every tear you cried was not wasted, but instead watered seeds that are now breaking through the soil in the form of divine opportunities, unexpected breakthroughs, and generational blessings. Your bloodline is shifting because of your sacrifice, so that the children who come after you, whether biological, spiritual, or communal, will walk through doors you opened with your being. And if you're still hungry for more chapters to this journey, or a visual concept for a video or thumbnail, just say the word. I'm here and ready to help bring it all to life. Thanks for watching. Here ends this video. Take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. If you find this video interesting,